Welcome, everyone. My name is Alethea O'Hara Stevenson, and we're here today to discuss anti-racism and the recent tragic events that have occurred in the media, and also the recent Black Lives Matter marches that have taken place across the globe, and of course, right here in Shelburne and in the town of Orangeville. This afternoon, I am joined by Warden Darren White, and also the Mayor of Melanchthon, Mayor Wade Mills for the town of Shelburne, Deputy Mayor Steve Anderson for the town of Shelburne, Chief Mohr, Shelburne Town Police, and of course, Gear Harvey, or social worker here in the town of Shelburne, and also from St. Dufferin District High School. So welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. I know we have a jam-packed agenda today. If you could just, each of you want to call your name, just give a brief overview about who you are, and then I will jump right into our discussion questions. So I'll start with you, Warden White. Just a quick overview, who you are and what the audience doesn't know about you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. I am Darren White. I'm the current sitting warden of Dufferin County and the mayor of the township of Melanchthon. The warden, I guess, is sort of the senior political leader in the county. I'm responsible for running the meetings, setting the agenda, sort of leading county council, which is made up of all the mayors and deputy mayors except for 2 of the 8 municipalities in Dufferin County. It's a role I enjoy, and I get to work with great guys like Wade Mills and Steve Anderson and many other fantastic people. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, thank you. And Mayor Mills?
Great. Yeah, well, thanks very much for hosting this, Alethea, and thanks to the rest of the panelists for taking the time to join in. My name's Wade Mills. I'm the mayor of the town of Shelburne. I'm a first-term mayor. We were elected in October of 2018, sworn in December of 2018. So we're still in the first half of our term. I grew up locally, attended St. Dufferin District High School, then was gone for a few years pursuing my education, and then I returned back to Shelburne in 2010, where I bought a law practice where I currently practice now.
Wonderful, thank you. And Chief Mohr?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I am the Shelburne Police Chief. I've been a Shelburne Police Service officer since January of 1987. And I took over the role as the police chief in January of 2005.
Perfect, thank you. That's a very long tenure. And Deputy Mayor Anderson?
Yeah, my tenure doesn't go that far back, but so this is like Mayor Mills said, this is my first term as deputy mayor, and certainly proud to work alongside Wade. I did tell the crowd recently at the Black Lives Matter gathering that Wade and I filed papers together on the same day, and so I guess we're sort of attached to the hip from that day until now, and I'd like to believe that we're doing good work. Certainly working with the warden at the council level is certainly my first time, but it's a great pleasure working under his leadership, and so I'm also thankful for this opportunity, Alethea, and to also have this important conversation with your distinguished panel.
Excellent. And Mr. Harvey?
Hi, Gear Harvey, a parent in town, volunteer in town, and happy and feeling blessed for this opportunity.
Excellent, thank you. Before we dive further into the agenda, I would be remiss if I did not do the land acknowledgement. This is important. So just take a moment now to read the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Given that we are also in the month of June, it's important to recognize that June is National Aboriginal Month, Indigenous Month, and it's to recognize and honor the history and heritage and diversity of Indigenous peoples in Canada. last but not least, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the great Black Canadians who have accomplished great things, paved the way for us in Canada, and contributed to the wonderful mosaic of not just Dufferin County, but Canada as a whole. So thank you everyone for joining us, and let's get right into the agenda. So Warden White, I'm going to start with you just to kick things off. So initially, after the recent events that took place, you sat down with Deputy Mayor Anderson to have a very frank conversation about the tragedies that have taken place, and you made a commitment to, do whatever it takes to make sure that Dufferin County remains, a place where everyone can thrive, where everyone feels that, belonged. So can you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts and what went into that discussion and why you felt compelled to sit down and have that discussion?
Thanks. And I mean, I, like just about everybody else on the planet, I think was just shocked by what I saw happen to Mr. Floyd. And it's unfortunate that I realize that it's not something I've only seen that one time. I've seen it before, and I've seen it, unfortunately, a number of times since. And I mean, it became a very timely situation, a very timely topic, and I felt it was important to bring Deputy Mayor Anderson on and chat with him about it from his perspective as a Black man and new to a leadership role in the county, and my perspective as a white guy in the county, a county that is facing change, demographic change, and change across a number of different demographics. I felt that it was a conversation that really needed to be started. And I'm really hopeful that this will be the time that we can really seize the reins of that conversation and make change. I'm happy to do whatever is within my power to do to make positive change for people of color, people of Aboriginal descent. I mean, I grew up in an area where there was a lot of Indigenous people in Northern Labrador, and I moved to Toronto, and I got to be exposed to every member of society from all across the world, and that's a role that I've always relished, and and I'm fully realizing that I have been raised in a position where I have more or had more opportunity than most, and I think it's I both struggle realizing that lately, but it's sort of really starting to hit home that I'm able to use my position now and the street cred that I have to sort of move this forward and make this into something that doesn't happen anymore. I really hope we can get to a place where we're not talking about different races. We're one people, and everybody just has similar or equity and ability and opportunity, and I think it's really important. So that's sort of my motivation for trying to be as involved as I can.
Excellent. So since you've had that discussion, have you put any plans in place, or are you working on any initiatives specifically that will help to make Dufferin County a more equitable place?
Well, I am. I brought forward a motion at the last county council meeting to add 2 scholarships to the Bill Hill Scholarship Program, one dedicated to a person of color, one dedicated to a person of Aboriginal or Indigenous descent. While I think that's a very important thing to do, I also think it's a small thing to do. So I've been having some conversations with some other political leaders. I'm hoping to loop Mayor Mills and Deputy Mayor Anderson and some other folks like yourself in on those conversations to create some kind of a broader reaching diversity and inclusion committee at the county level. I know that Shelburne has already taken some strides with their task force, and I think broadly across the county is kind of the next step and somewhere we need to go. So I'm hoping to have a motion ready for the next county council meeting to put that into action and maybe get the wheels moving on.
Wonderful, that's excellent news. Deputy Mayor Anderson, can I jump over to you and ask you to share your thoughts on your discussions and the things that have transpired right here in the town of Shelburne? I know particularly you had the opportunity to participate in the recent Black Lives Matter March. Can you share your thoughts and perspectives, please?
Sure. Thanks. Let me just first piggyback off what the warden said. Having that conversation with him, look, to be frank, as elected officials, people look to us to show leadership, especially during difficult times. And so I think obviously it was important for both myself and the warden to sort of be in the front, I guess, leading the charge and showing that leadership. We have to be mindful of not being indifferent or aloof to what's happening around us. There are a lot of people who are certainly hurting as a result of what has transpired and has been transpiring for, quite frankly, a number of years. And so, as the warden said, it was important to let the people know that we hear you. We certainly feel the pain, and beyond that, it's time for us to take action. And so, as you heard a bit about what the warden has said by way of taking action, as you know, Alethea, following your presentation at the county, there was a motion that was brought forward to have the staff come back at the county to, I believe actually Mayor Mills seconded that motion, to have the county staff come back and talk to us about the feasibility of establishing a diversity and inclusion committee, standalone, potentially. So, and I believe, Warden, if I'm not mistaken, that conversation should be coming for discussion sometime soon, I guess, when staff comes back. So, it's more than just listening, it's about taking action. And as you talk about the recent events, and in particular, the Black Lives Matter, I don't call it a protest, I call it a gathering, because that's what it was. It was a gathering of individuals with like-mindedness who wants to see better for the community and everybody in the community. And so certainly I was happy to join Mayor Mills and many other individuals, fellow councillors as well, to walk alongside the youth that organized this event in the town of Shelburne, and have the privilege to address the crowd, because not only am I an elected official, but I'm also a Black man, as the warden pointed out. And so many of the things that we heard during the protest and the pain that we've heard from members of the community are some of the experiences that I've encountered myself. And so it was important for me to be there, because some of the issues that we're talking about impact me. So it's important to be there to support that, because I guess selfishly wanting things to improve for myself and certainly my family, and of course wanting to see things improve for the community. And so when our young people are taking these kinds of initiatives, it's important to get behind them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, Deputy Mayor Anderson. Mayor Mills, so you shared a very heartfelt video, talking about that, you can do more. And in fact, all of us can do more. Can you share your thoughts and feelings around what inspired you and what moved you to come to that conclusion? And also touch on the fact that, you were able to participate in the march as well, or the gathering, as Deputy Mayor so rightly called it. Can you share, your thoughts and feelings, your emotions from that day, and what steps we have taken as, the town of Shelburne to further the cause and make sure that Shelburne remains inequitable? Please.
Sure. Yeah. When I released the video statement a few weeks ago, and as you mentioned, where I indicated that there's more that I can do, but in fact there's more that all of us can do. What I was really trying to convey was a sincere nod to the notion that looking back, over my lifetime, there certainly have been instances where I've witnessed racism. Whether it's outright expressions of racism, or really sort of low level, subtle expressions of it. I've seen it, as all of us have, and the number of times where I think all of us, if we're honest with each other, can think about where we maybe didn't say anything at all and just sort of let it pass. Figured, well, this doesn't involve me. I'm not that way, so I'll just stay out of it. And what I think we're starting to see is a welling up of emotions, throughout all of our communities, to say, finally, I think there has to be a recognition that merely is not enough. Not being a racist yourself is simply not enough anymore. When you see that sort of behavior, when you see those sorts of hateful expressions, it's incumbent upon all of us to take a stand and to speak out against that, but not only speak out against it. We have to go a step further, and we have to actually take, some pretty strong progressive actions, I think, to implement the sorts of changes that are actually needed. But going beyond that, and this is one of the things that I mentioned in my remarks on the steps of town hall here the day we had the Black Lives Matter gathering. There are certain things that the governments can do, whether it's, the federal, provincial, or local level governments. But the fact of the matter is, that there is no amount of legislation that is going to eliminate racism, anti-Black racism, racism in general, or any other form of discrimination. The sort of change that I think all of us are looking for, in my mind, really does have to begin in the hearts of every home in our community. And that's the only way to address this. But that being said, those of us who are on this call, all hold some form of leadership position within our community. So I think the responsibility for us is, to lead that sort of change and lead by example and express our commitment on a personal level to it, in the hopes that other hearts will begin to follow.
Excellent, thank you. What are some of the steps that you've taken or the town has taken to drive forward change in the community? Yeah. Or so perhaps steps that are underway, sorry.
Sorry. So the very first step that we've taken, the deputy mayor brought a notice of motion at our last council meeting. And this was unanimously supported by our council colleagues to strike the anti-Black racism task force, and you're the very able chair of that, which I'm glad to see. And this, as I've mentioned a few times, and I think as the deputy mayor will back me up on, this is just the first step. I think what this initiative is designed to do is to hear from those who are actually affected by racism within our community, and then try to come up with some actual, concrete, constructive suggestions or recommendations that can be brought back to council in order to implement actual change. So I mean, that is step one, but I think it's a critically important step, because, quite frankly, as a, white man sitting here, I haven't had to deal with a lot of these issues. So I'm probably not the best one to, be developing policy to confront it. I want to hear from those members of our community who are actually living this day in, day out, and learn from them.
That's a great first step. And I'm happy to share that, the community has been very responsive. A number of community members have reached out and, are willing to step up and share their thoughts, share their experiences. So this is definitely a great first step. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Mohr just to hear his thoughts. And again, Chief Mohr, you had, sent out a very heartfelt letter on basically condemning racism in our community, and the death of George Floyd, and how tragic it was and unnecessary. Can you share with us your thoughts and perhaps some of the steps that are in place right now to combat discrimination in our community?
Yes, thank you. So again, similar thoughts to the other people in our group, but as a police leader, I felt it was important to make a public statement, and I still feel that way today. I feel really good about it. Since releasing the statement, I've had an opportunity to engage in many conversations as a result of the statement. Some very easy conversations, some very tough, but and I've had these conversations with many people in our community and outside of our community in relation to racism and discrimination. I think that's a very positive outcome. I realize it's a very small step, but I do find it to be positive. So again, I'm glad I had an opportunity to put that statement out. I feel as good about it today as I did on the day I released it. And I also attended the Black Lives Matter march or gathering stated by the deputy mayor. to further show my support. I'm very proud of the march that took place in Shelburne in the recent past, and I see it as an important start or stepping stone for our community, and I think it was just a great event.
I would agree with you, the fact that it was a great event. And I think one of the things that was most powerful and impactful for me, just, observing, walking alongside, members of the community, was the number of young people that stepped up, the number of young people that were out showing their support, and the number of young people that led the charge. And to me, that's a commitment and a testament to the future of our community, the strength of our community. And again, I think someone earlier in the comments, stated that people are tired, people are fed up, and it's we're at a point now where emotions are running high. So it's a time that we need to act and really step up and take the lead and do things. So for me, it was a very powerful moment seeing, the sheer number of people that came out in support, as well as the number of youth that stood up and participated in such a great event. On that
just before, I think this is important, I just want to interject. I know this wasn't sort of planned, but I too want to commend the chief for attending, him and his officers. I must say, since my time in Shelburne, I had nothing but positive interactions with Chief Mohr and his team there. And it was actually very nice because we know how the George Floyd situation unfolded and the tensions as it surrounds the police. And it was great to see the community bond, not only amongst each other as residents, but certainly as community members along with our police, our local police. And so I want to certainly take this opportunity to thank the chief, not only for putting out the statement, but for the relationship that they've been able to build with the community thus far.
I agree. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson, for acknowledging that.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you also, Deputy Mayor, for making that statement. It truly is much appreciated.
Wonderful, thank you. Gear Harvey, so over to you again. And as a parent in the community, as a volunteer and activist, and involved in the school as well, can you share with us your thoughts, not just on participating in the march, but your thoughts on the events that have transpired and how you're feeling? How do you deal with a situation from a parent perspective?
From a parent perspective, from a community member, I was encouraged to see the different people that were out, black, white, and so on, out supporting the march. I didn't know what would come in terms of who would show up and how many would show up, but it was encouraging to see so many people that did show up, right? And they reflected the community. At the same time, I was also I was thinking in my mind, I wonder if they know what's next. I wonder if they're prepared for the work that will come next in terms of what's required and how powerful this beast is, right? When it comes to tackling things of racism, I wonder. So I was happy, but I was reserved, and I was kind of staying within myself, just thinking, I hope folks are ready for what's next. Right? Because when you start talking about anti-Black racism, when you start talking about racism, it's something that makes people real uncomfortable, right? And first off, it was encouraging for me that we even saying the word, right? Because, in Canada for a long time, we just say discrimination, we say prejudice, we say all these different things, right? And one of the things that's been encouraging for me is how quickly folks have moved on different things, right? So whether it's seeing the things that you've put to the county or here in town, and even at the last municipal election, it's been encouraging to see how quickly folks are moving forward. Right? I'm thinking, oh wow, this is I sit back like every racialized person does, be like, we're kind of watching to see what's happening. Okay, they're gonna let us do this or they're gonna let us do that, and it's been encouraging to see white folks step up and call it for what it is, and to be brave enough to want to step forward. One thing I do know is that for white folks who decide to engage in the work of equity, I know they're not looking for a pat in the back, right? Because it's a matter of human decency, it's a matter of integrity, right? That we take this on, right? And so I know people are not looking for a pat in the back when I was walking out there with my neighbors, you know. But it was encouraging. It felt really encouraging. My school principal was out, and my wife sought her out and thanked her for being out, because my son's at the school there, and saying, okay, thank you for this. Thank you for showing out and representing, and saying, you know what, this is important, and we recognize and we see you.
That's great. And, you know, you talk about, you didn't say the word allyship, but, you know, it was definitely there in your description. And I think that's a great step, but beyond allyship, you know, it's having those individuals that are willing to stand up and, you know, put action into place, not just, you know, standing behind an email or, you know, behind just words saying, you know, that they condemn racism, but actually putting concrete steps in place, much like what, you know, everyone on the panel here has committed to doing, you know, with the Anti-Black Racism, Anti-Racism and Discrimination Committee, the Diversity and Inclusion, and Chief Mohr physically being, you know, a presence in the community and supporting his team so that, you know, there is a physical positive presence interacting with the community members. So I think we've definitely made some great steps. When you talk about work that's to come, can you give us an example of what that work could potentially look like?
Well, the biggest part of the work is the pushback, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I'm going to use some terms, you know, sociologists and social workers use, but white supremacy does not want to be displaced, or to step aside, or to let folks be, right? So we think about Canada as the country that it is, and you know, there were people here before us, but officially, the languages in Canada is English and French.
Right.
How let's think about that and let that sink in, right? Now I recognize the First Nations community have, and I'm not speaking for them, but as an immigrant coming to this country and learning about Canada and whatnot, you know, these are things I've come to understand about Canada. There's Indigenous people here, and so on and so forth. And the narrative of, you know, white Europeans discovered Canada, all these different things. Like we're sitting and paying attention to facts. You know what I mean? But some people are refusing or don't want to pay attention to those facts. They say this is how it's always been, and why should it change? And so, you know, for the white folks on this panel, I hope you are ready for the pushback, because the beast is strong and powerful, and it does not want to be moved. All right. And so what does it look like? Is for you to continue to do what you're doing. You know, I would invite you to take a look at a clip from Bettina Love, and she's a professor in the States. And she says, you know, I'll give a quick story, and then I'll be quiet. So there was one point when they decided we're going to take the Confederate flag in the States, right? And so there's some activists, both white and black, decide, okay, we're going to do this. So there's a black lady decided to train her to take down the flag, right? So they trained her. They said, we're going to get her bail money ready, and they prepared and they prepped to do it, right? So it was the black lady who went and did it. She went to the poll, and went to a white gentleman went with her, and she went up the pole. Police, of course, showed up, and he said, they said, okay, you know what we'll do? We will tase the pole to get her down, right? And her white colleague, who was part of this movement with her, recognized what it means to be white and the influence and that he has, and he stepped closer to the pole and he put his hands on the pole, right? And in doing that, he acknowledged, I will take a hit for this because it is important, because it is right, you know, but I reckon I will take this hit. I will take this hit as a white person, because I know the police are not going to charge the pole, right? They're not going to do that. And he knew how he could essentially cash out his white privileges. Again, a term from Bettina Love. And that's what he did. And she talks about how in the Underground Railroad, which Canada plays a huge part in it. You know, white folks, when you're coming and knocking on a door, you know, of white folks who joined the abolitionist movement, you have to trust them, right? You have to trust the white person behind the door that they were going to turn you back over to the folks in the South or whatnot for you to be enslaved again. And those are things that white and black people did together, right? They developed a trust where I'm going to come in the middle of the night, whatever it was, I'm going to knock on the door, I'm going to trust you. You're going to let me in, and you're going to keep me safe because you recognize what's happening to Black folks and racialized folks is not right. And so what's next? It's facing the beast. Facing the beast is what's next.
Wow. That's very powerful, what you just shared with us, Gary. Thank you so much. And, I think I'd like to echo, and I'll give Wade and perhaps Warden White and Deputy Mayor Anderson a chance to comment on that. But I think, we're seeing some of those steps, being taken by our leaders in the community, not just, saying words, but they're taking physical steps to take action. So Deputy Mayor Anderson or perhaps Mayor Mills, do you want to comment on some of the thoughts that Gary shared, or anyone?
Sure, I'll jump in and just let me say right off the bat, Gary, I hear what you're saying in terms of this beast, and I don't think any of us should be naive enough to think that this is going to be a short battle or an easy one, because I mean there are certainly segments of the population that as you say, don't want to have their belief systems disturbed. But I think in the fullness of time, if we're successful in this, what ultimately will happen is that the competing beast, I guess the one that we're bringing to battle, the one that has kindness and goodness and compassion in its heart, hopefully will overpower the dark beast. And sorry for the odd imagery, but I really do believe that. And going back to my earlier comments, I think the way that we nurture that good beast, again, is to try to change the hearts of people. And I'm under no illusions that this is going to take some time, and in fact it may take a generation or two to fully deal with this, because hearts are not easy things to change, and those that are set in their ways may not be willing to change at all. So it may be the younger generations that will ultimately resolve this. But looking at this thing in terms of the context with which it deserves, and I mentioned this in my remarks a couple of Sundays ago as well. This is a social reckoning that quite frankly has been 400 years in the making. So, for us, to say, well, within a few weeks or a few months, we're going to undo all of that, I really do think is naive. So all of us do have to, have to dig in and be ready for the long fight. And believe me, I'm aware of the fact that there certainly is going to be some pushback as well. And pushback from certain parts of the community, oddly enough, may be directed at individuals like Warden White and myself more so than others. But that's fine. I think ultimately it's the right thing to do, and that's why we're doing it. So.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Mayor Mills just said. I'm under no illusion that this is going to be easy, and I fully expect that. Well, I fully expect that I'm going to gain a lot of friends out of this, and that number will outweigh the number of friends that I'm going to lose as a result of it. And my main motivation for doing this is I have 5 grandchildren, and they're all under 5 years old, and they don't have racism in their heart. They don't know it. They don't see it. They don't get it. I go to my oldest grandson's birthday party, and there's kids there from all different kinds of backgrounds, and they have not yet learned to hate. And I don't want them to grow up in a world. I don't want to die whenever I'm going to die, and realize that maybe my grandkids had an opportunity to not learn to hate and didn't take it, and I want to be part of that fix. And I've seen racism in action. I've seen it in close to me. It's not. I'm not even going to try and gloss it over, but 3 months ago, there's conversations in my sort of extended family and neighbors and whatnot in the neighborhood where somebody makes an off color or a weird comment, and you just gloss it over and you move by. And now I find myself going, wait a second, maybe you should really rethink that strategy, because while it seems okay to you, it's really not okay, and here's why it's not okay. But one of the things that concerns me, and sort of goes to what you're talking about here, is that, you know, social media is a mean, nasty place many times, and, you know, you don't have to go far on there right now to see people fighting back already, and it's disturbing. It's really disturbing. And, you know, when you say Black Lives Matter, the people who come out of the woodwork with the All Lives Matter, or the, you know, you name it, you've got more experience with it than I do, but it's just disturbing that people are not just willing to move on. And, you know, and I'm not going to say also that I've never been that guy, because I have. I know I have. I know, thankfully, it was farther away in my life than to now, and I've sort of been evolving as a human over the past 15 years. But that doesn't excuse the fact that at some points I've used slurs, I've used negative language, and I've probably more than likely excluded somebody because of their race or their heritage. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm willing to do the work, whatever the cost. And I'm here for the long haul. I'm in it to win it. And that's the deal with me. I'm not willing to back down on this anymore.
Yeah, you know what, if I may, Alethea, just jump in on that. First, I want to thank Gear for that. You know, that was a really powerful example, to be honest with you. That had me feeling sort of tingly inside, bro. I must say. You talked about moving beyond simple allyship and being prepared to take a hit. And you talked about the trust factory here, and about you know, the white cohorts knocking on the doors and opening the door and feeling a sense of trust. I could say that at least with the gentlemen on this panel, that they have knocked on the door, and I've certainly opened it because I certainly trust each and every one of these guys. What they say, they're going to back up by their action. Taking a hit, I think it's important for the people who are eventually going to watch this to understand that for Chief Mohr, Warden White, and Weyer Mills to come forward and even say what they're saying, they're going to take a nasty hit. And most people wouldn't want to do that because they're quite comfortable in their social circles. They don't want anything slightly that could cause any sort of problem or concern, not only on them, but potentially how they're viewed or their families viewed in their community. So the fact that Mayor Mills came out and did that heartfelt message talking about he could do better, the fact that we just heard from the warden talking about his experience, I mean, that's, to be honest with you, I wasn't even expecting to hear that. I'm moved by what the warden has said. And if that's not somebody who's prepared to put themselves out there for a cause that's better, then I don't know what is. And certainly the chief, very well known, very well liked in the community as well, didn't have to do what he did. You know, maybe not too many people would have complained about it. Certainly the people who are in love with Chief Mohr. But the fact that he was prepared to sacrifice some likes and maybe some free coffee at Tim Hortons or Pete's for coming out with a statement like that, I'm proud of him. So, like you said, Gear, you know, I'm optimistic, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to make sure, as community members and elected officials, that the work gets done.
Wonderful, thank you. Chief Mohr, did you want to add anything else before I jump in?
I don't think so. I'm really happy with everybody's comments tonight. I think, you know, we're off to a great start with this task force. Yeah, when I released the statement, have I received some negative backlash? Yes, but you know what? I'm proud of releasing that statement. I'm happy I released that statement. And again, I've been a police officer for 33 and a half years and the chief for 16. I'm more than willing to stand up for what's right. And I think I can handle anything negative coming to me, and bring it on. I welcome it.
Thank you. You know, just hearing everyone's thoughts and comments, I'm getting a bit emotional because of, you know, the overwhelming support from everyone. And Warden White just commented about, the fact that, he's had some learning, and I think we all have, learnings and unlearning that we need to do. So it's not something that's going to be fixed in perhaps my lifetime, maybe my grandchildren's lifetime, but everyone at the table is committed to making sure that the future is brighter for everyone. So I have to commend everyone for getting uncomfortable, simply being on this discussion right now and having these frank conversations. Before I close out, I just wanted to touch a little bit on Chief Mohr's leadership experience and just flipping the script a little bit. Given, what's happening in the media, as a leader, how do you prepare your team to go out and continue to be the best officers that they can be, to continue to serve and protect, with honor and respect, knowing that they could potentially be faced with some negative comments, or just even with what all the negativity that has been portrayed in the media towards police? How do you lead and make sure that they continue to be the best that they can be?
Yeah, Alethea, thank you for asking this. It's a challenge because all of our officers in Shelburne are first and foremost human beings who care about the community. They care about the citizens. We've always taken pride in doing our utmost as police officers to keep Shelburne as safe as possible. The images that we've seen over the past few weeks have yes, they've been very disturbing to say the least, and our officers share in that sentiment. There's been many conversations in our office about that. We get that the negativity around policing right now is not being expressed only within the context of the last few weeks, but that it's based within the context of historical and systemic racism. We're lucky in Shelburne. We're very fortunate to have a high degree of community support, which helps during times like this. As many on this call will know from their personal experience, their lives, it's always tough when the actions of a few taint the view of a whole group, and it's very unfortunate. But we're going to continue doing what we do. I'm going to continue to speak to our officers about going out there and being the best that we can each and every day. And I've got a great group of officers, and I think that we're going to continue to do just that.
Thank you for saying that, and I definitely appreciate, the great work that your team has been doing, and I'm sure will continue to do for years to come. On a personal note, I do appreciate when I see, the officers in the community doing drive-bys and just, giving a wave to, community members, especially children. I had one experience recently where an officer, was just driving by and picked up one of my, relatives in the car and just had them in the front seat and having a grand old time and just, bonding, with the child. So to me, those are some great steps, small steps, but great steps in building positive relationship with law enforcement. So kudos to that officer for doing that. And, thank you for, being there and being active in the community, participating in the various events that have taken place, such as the Black History Month events and a number of other initiatives that I have seen your staff participating over the years. So again, thank you for that. Before we close, does anyone have any closing comments? This session, I think, was very powerful, very impactful, and I don't think this will be the last conversation. I anticipate many more similar conversations in the days and perhaps weeks and years to come. But before we close this specific forum, maybe I'll just go around the table and start with you, Mayor Mills. Do you have any final thoughts?
Just thanks to you again for hosting this, and to the rest of the panels again for talking so frankly about what by its very nature are, I think, some fairly emotional internal feelings. So, but when we boil it down, I think that's the only way to move this forward is if everybody's honest and upfront and willing to talk about those things that may have in previous times been considered socially taboo. Let's be frank about it. Let's get it out there. And to all of you, I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in this battle. And it's certainly is comforting and encouraging to know that we have each other's backs on this. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Warden White, any closing thoughts?
Thanks, Alicia. The only thing I can think of right now is I was remembering today, and I reached out to a couple of friends from way back, I think probably sort of the mid-90s. Me and 3 guys, we piled into a car. We had 2 weeks with nothing to do, and we decided we were going to do a little road trip down around Cape Cod, Bar Harbor, Boston, go to the Cheers bar, all of that touristy kind of stuff. So we did. We piled into a car, and there's me, there's a Sri Lankan guy, there's a black guy, and there's a Muslim. We were the greatest of friends. We worked at this bar together. We got along famously, and when we drove, we went out through Quebec and down through Vermont, and at the border checkpoint in Vermont, we got stopped and pulled out of the car. The car was taken apart and searched. And at the time, I thought this was just a bunch of, young guys full of piss and vinegar, and that's why we got pulled out. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been reevaluating that story. And today I reached out to the Sri Lankan fellow who I still talk to, all of them actually. His name is Raj. And I said, was that just because we were late teens, early 20s driving, or was that because I was in a car with 3 people of color and we were trying to cross the border? And he said, what do you think? So I'm under no illusions that they stopped the car because of the white guy sitting in the passenger seat. So that's sort of right now my motivation, reevaluation of a lot of things that I faced and a lot of things that I continue to think maybe weren't handled properly. And the fact that I don't want my kids and my grandkids to go down the same road. I want them to have a peaceful life with people of all different races and creeds. And I've been doing a lot of that lately, is sort of what I'll leave you with. And I think if everybody had the opportunity to look within themselves, they would find plenty of opportunities where they faced exactly that same kind of challenge and maybe didn't stand up when they should have stood up. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. Gare, any closing comments?
Yeah. Again, I'm encouraged. I think it's historical what's happened. I think George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Amy Cooper, in terms of the sequence of events, has said to the world, no more. And there's folks that's come before us who've said no more. And I want to think that we can accelerate the progress we can make together, because we do want to make it better for our kids, And in terms of just giving you something to think about, when you're hearing folks say all lives matter, I would like you to consider something. You're having a party, right? And it's, it's your birthday, and your little sister, your little brother starts to act up because it's your birthday. Of course, the attention's on her, right? Or the attention's on you, right? And he starts to act up. And the thing about this all lives matter is Black folks and racialized folks have not been having a party, right? And in a moment when your little sister is feeling jealous or ignored or whatnot, it's to remind her, you're loved just the same. You know what I mean? You're loved just the same. And we're just taking this moment to give attention to your brother, to your sister, because stuff's been happening to them that's not right. And it's okay for you to love them too. You know what I mean? Because you're going to set aside your feelings and your fears of change, or your fears of not being present and center of attention all the time. And it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We're not having a party. We haven't been having a party.
Thank you for sharing that. Chief Mohr, any closing comments?
Yes, thanks. Again, I just want to acknowledge the 2 young women who organized our peaceful gathering or march. I think it was a great example of how we can build safety and inclusion when we work together and bring to the forefront either lived experience or a genuine desire to be an ally. And I think what the 2 young women did was remarkable for our community. I think it took I think they were very brave. And so I just wanted to close in acknowledging them. And I think my message moving forward is I am listening, I am learning, I understand, and we're working to address these things. So moving forward, I think we're taking some great steps. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. Deputy Mayor Anderson?
Yeah, I guess after the task force comes back with the recommendations and council hopefully adopts them, that maybe we could have that party gear right here in town.
Hey.
I guess what I want to say in closing, just to be brief, is, you know, as Gear pointed out and everybody else did, is that we really do have a lot to be proud about and sort of comforted about as we sort of look at the long journey ahead. You know, it's important to point out that, you know, we've made a lot of progress. You know, there's a lot of things from whether it's the town of Shelburne or the county as a whole that we've been able to do and accomplish and see be accomplished in the last year alone. And so, you know, my spirits are certainly high as to what we could do when we're working together. And I look forward to working with everybody here on this panel. You know, the public is going to be watching. They are watching, and so they should. And it's important that they know, once again, that we've listened to their voices and we're all committed to taking action.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time to join today's very important discussion on anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and discrimination. It has been a very powerful session, and I look forward to the changes that will come in the future, and most notably starting with the anti-racism, anti-Black racism, anti-racism and discrimination task force, the diversity and inclusion committee that the warden and Mayor Mills and Deputy Mayor Anderson are going to be following up on, and a number of other initiatives that I anticipate will be coming forward in the near future. So once again, thank you very much for your support, your partnership, and together we can definitely do great things in the town of Shelburne. And since we've made reference to the two young leaders that organized the march, I'd like to shout out their names, Cheyenne Ricci and Haley McCarty. Thank you so much for your lead and your part in making sure that Shelburne is equitable and a safe place to live. So thank you, everyone. That's it. We will close out the session. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.